So what we're going to start off with today is something called chirps. Now chirps are idiomatic to the NAF. The other woodwinds that I play cannot do this type of ornament, or at least not the sound. They can't produce the sound. And it's also the most common NAF embellishment. At least I hear it the most. I hear it all the time, and I tend to do them more than anything else, really. They're kind of the ones that sort of first come to mind. And they're similar to cuts, and in some cases are exactly the same. And so since we have already looked at cuts last week, that'll help you with looking at chirps this week. And just like all the other ornaments, chirps are, the grace note is slurred to the main note, and they're usually played under a slur line. Okay. So let's look at some basic chirps. Now, the thing to remember here is that when you're doing the finger movement to produce a chirp, at least this is the way I do it, most of the time you're going to be opening the fingering to what I would normally call note 7. So in other words, all the bottom holes open and the middle open on the top of the flute. Now you can't see my fingering, but if you know my number system, you can see there the first 4 examples here, they're all grace notes on 7. Even though you're going down to a 1 or down to a 3, down to a 4 or down to a 5. Okay, so let me, well, we'll get to demonstrating that. Let me just sort of say principally that if you are playing note 1, 3, 4, or 5 as your main note, you will produce a chirp by opening up and playing the note that would normally be associated with note 7. Now I say normally because we don't really want it to be heard like a full note, just like with the taps and the cuts. It's just a little effect, right? Now on the very far right-hand side of this example, you'll see that if you're playing note 7, that's your main note. You can't do the chirp on the note you're about to embellish. You have to do something else. So there we go to 8. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is if the note just before whatever you're going to play the chirp on is also a 7, you have to go to 8. So basically the rule of thumb is everything is produced by using note 7 unless the note before or after the chirp is actually a 7. Because if you're playing a 7 either before or after the embellishment, you can't actually use that note anymore. Okay? So let's look at some examples. So all of these start on note 1, and the grace note is all on note 7. But the chirp is an ornament in the first example to note 3, then it's to note 4, and then it's to note 5. So let me play these for you. So first let me just play without it. I'm in a G, on a G flute by the way. Now I'm going to put the chirp in it. Now I'm going to go to 1 to 4. Now the chirp. And 1 to 5. And the chirp. Okay, so I'm using the same fingering. Now let me play through these again, but using a tap first and then a chirp. So do the first measure. This is with a tap. I'm sorry, with a cut. Let me do it again. It's with a cut, not a tap. Now chirp. You can really hear the difference, right? Now here's to 4 as a cut. Now with the chirp. Now with this last example, whether I do a chirp or a cut, doesn't matter what I choose to call it, the motion that I'm going to do is exactly the same because 7 is 1 note above 5 for a cut in the pentatonic scale. But in this case, it's also a chirp. So they are dovetailing here. Let me move on. The same thing will work if I go backwards. Okay, so I'm starting on note 5 in all these examples, and the main note in the first example is 4, then 3, and then 1. But I'm still using a chirp. Here's the next one. And then finally the 1, 2, the main note on 1. As you can imagine, that's a little tricky. It's doable though. Here's just some more examples. So here we have main notes of 4, 5, and 5 again. We're just coming from different notes. So the first example, I'm going 3 to 4. If that was a cut, I'd go, but with a chirp, it cuts more. It gets more of that sort of barky sound. Okay, here's 3 to 5. Now again, the chirp and the cut on 5 are exactly the same. And then 4 to 5, the chirp and the cut would be the same. Now here's an example that the embellishment is on 2 different notes. One is a 5 and the other one is a 4. But because I'm doing the grace note on 7, I'm calling these both, regardless of the fact that the 5 is like a cut, I'm going to call them both chirps. It seems that the chirp has emphasis and is louder than bass notes. The chirp has emphasis. It may sound that, okay, so the question was, it seems that the chirp has emphasis and is louder than the bass notes. That may be because we're going through the internet, okay? And also the chirp is really high up in the register, so it's going to cut more, right? If you play your flute normally, the lower notes of the flute are softer than the higher notes. So that's, I think, what this gentleman is hearing. And I kind of agree. So let me play this without the embellishments. I'm going to put them in. Do that again. So my finger movement is the same on both of those. I'm opening to the 7. It just, what note I'm returning to, the main note, that's what's different here. And I'll show my fingers a little bit later on and help you see this also in action. Actually, let me do that now. And I'm going to stand up so you can see me too. So if I'm on 1 and I'm going to 5, I'm going to open up this fingering, what I would normally call 7, to do a chirp. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to land on 4 now. Now 3. Obviously, I could do 1. It's going to go back to where I started. Okay. So technically, I could walk up and down the bottom 4 notes just doing chirps. Or the other way. And the motion's always the same. I'm always opening to this hole. And it has a very distinctive sound. Okay. Hopefully that helped to see my fingers. I know it goes fast. So here's another example. And again, the last main note here is a 5. Are you changing your breath for the chirp note? No, I am not at all. That's a very good question. I'm playing all of that under what would be a slur. So when I was doing going through the scale, da 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 da, not doing anything with my breath. I'm just blowing into the instrument and letting my fingers do it. Okay. That is an excellent question. All right. Let me play this one. I'm still in G. I'm going to play it first without the embellishments. And because these are all going to be using the grace note on the 7, I'm going to call all of them, including the last one, a chirp. if I really did this in 2 measures, that would be a good example of over embellishing. We'll play some of these later. Let me just go through these quickly. These are separate examples. I know it looks like one piece of music, but it's not. Okay. And again, no matter what my principal note is, these are all chirps. And you'll notice that the third measure here, the third slur line anyway, the main note is a 7. So I have to do the motion on note 8. All right, so let me play these with the embellishment just for time. Okay. Hopefully you're already hearing something that sounds very idiomatic to this instrument. It's a very distinctive sound, and players use it all the time. Now, another thing I want to mention here is that chirps always resolve down. They always go down to a note. So you'll see here in some of these examples, for example, the last 3 notes in this line, I put a chirp in it, and if that was a cut, I would say, well, you don't normally want to do that going down on a line that's going down because I'm going from 3 to 1. But the chirp goes way up and then comes down. So by its very motion of going up high, it creates contrary motion. Okay. Here's another really busy example. Way too many chirps. And this one's a little tricky because there's so many. And I think there's a tap in here. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Let's play some chirps. Let's take a look at adding chirps in Little Crow Dance. Again, Little Crow Dance, I wrote this piece for students to learn embellishments. And so the first line, we're going to put all the chirps in between the repeated notes, except for in the second to last measure, we're going to add 1 in the back half of measure 3. And all of these chirps, except for that last one I mentioned, they're all also cuts. So you've done this before, all right? Let me stay with G for a bit, and then I'll switch to A a little bit later, okay? So let me play the song again. I'll just play the first measure without the embellishments, just to get it back in your head again. Okay, so now I'm going to add them in, and again, the first 3 they're like cuts because a chirp on the 5 is the same as a cut on 5. When I say on a note, I'm referring to the main note. And the last one, because I'm going to note 7, there's a 7 involved, I'm going to have to do the finger motion to the 8. Okay, so let me play this for you, and then we'll play it together. Okay. A lot of moisture in the air here today. It snowed this morning. Okay, so let's play this all together. I'll count in 4 free beats, and we can play it all together. We'll start on G, and then I'll move to A, and so everybody who has an A flute can play along with me, okay? All right, so here we go. I'm going to count in 4 beats, and if you have a flute in G, please play along, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing in A. So if you have an A flute, go ahead and switch. First line again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Can do that again. By the way, I realized I just misled you. The second chirp in the first measure, that is actually a chirp. It's not a cut, because a cut would go to 5, not 4. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm going to stick with A. Let's go to the second line. Now I'm going to put a motion in between the repeated notes. So in the first measure, we're going to play 2 5s. You can see I have the articulation mark there, the 2 das. That's your tongue stroke. And then before we play the 4 on the third beat, we're going to put a chirp in, which is opening this, and then we're going to come down to the 4th note. Then at the beginning of the next measure, we're going to go from 4, and we're going to do a chirp on the 7 to come to 5, and then we have a kind of a sticky one going to 3. Let me play this line, and I will also say in the very end there I have a cut, a true cut on the last 2 notes. Okay, so let me play it first without the embellishments, and then I'll put it in, and then we'll do it together. Guys. Now I played a whole note there because I'm using the chirp there to cut the whole note into 2 half notes. Now I'll put the embellishments in. All right. Okay, so if you have an A flute, play along. I'll count in 4 free beats, and then we'll move to G. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me move to G, and I'll count in again. If you have a G flute, please play. So 4 free beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're finding this a little tricky, that's understandable. I do have exercises for this in the book, and one of the best things to do is just sort of play, like let's say you start on note 5, and you pop that 7, and then come right down to 5, then you move down to 4, and then you do the chirp, and then to 3, and you work your way all on down. So let me play that for you. So I'm going to do a 5, which is basically a cut. Now I'm going to do 4, but I'm going to open up to this, not to this, which is a cut. Okay, then 3. And finally 1. And then you would go to moving between notes. So maybe I'd go from 4 to 5, and I'd put the chirp in between that. So I'd go from here to here, but I go dump, dump, but up. So, okay. And also, you want to be sure that you're not hearing the chirp as a note. You don't want, that's no longer an ornament. The brain can hear it as a pitch. Who can see your messages recording on? Jill, I get a crisper chirp if I just park, if I tongue is. You can tongue if you want to. There's no rule. So somebody's saying, can I tongue the grace note? Sure, but I don't, because if you're going fast, if you can tongue that, sure. Plus, for this instrument, you don't really need it. But if you want to, you can. You know, it depends upon if you're tonguing every note too. Which I don't tend to do on this instrument. Okay. All right, let's go to the third line, and I'll start in G and then I'll switch. So we're back to doing repeated notes in the first half of the measure, and then you'll see I have a couple that are going to a main note of 7. So I'm doing the chirp on note 8. All right. So let me play the tune without it, and then I'll put them in. And also notice there's a tap here. I'm using the tap and the cut in that last measure to break up what originally is a whole note. So that's why I just played a whole note. Okay, and then let me put the embellishments in. Okay. And also I should say, this is over embellished. This is not really how to do the tune, okay? So let's play it together if you have a G, and then I'll switch to A, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you're not quite getting it the first time, don't worry about it. This comes with practice, basically. So I'm just, introducing you to what is possible, not expecting that, you can do it. Sometimes I can't. All right, third line in on a A flute. Okay, so I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and I'm going to stick with A, and we're going to go to the last line. And you're going to see at the end of this, there is an ornament we haven't talked about yet. So I'm not going to play that. We'll wait till we get to it. Okay. So let me play it without anything. I'm still in A. Okay, let me put the ornaments in except for that very last one. By the way, while I was playing that, I was thinking about the comment on here about tonguing it. The other thing about tonguing it is if you're mostly playing slurred lines and you just tongue the grace note, you're going to bring that out and add emphasis to that. If you are tonguing every single note, which this song is telling you not to because it has a slur line, but if you are, and then you tongue the grace note, it won't sound as if it's sort of jumping out of nowhere. Whereas if you're slurring all the time, then suddenly you tongue the note, the grace note, it's going to pop. Okay. So let's play this on A, and then I'll switch to G. So I'm going to count in 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me pick up a G flute. Get one that's not watering out. And again, I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How do you get the bark in the chirp? That's interesting, that question, because a lot of people call chirps barks. I also hear them called woofs, like a dog. The finger movement itself is what's causing it. So again, by bouncing, that's what I think of myself, is I'm just bouncing to this fingering. Are you moving multiple notes on the grace note to keep a better, different sound? No. I'm doing exactly what I'm saying and exactly what I've written in the book. Or on the handout. I go when I go from one note to another, if I'm putting a chirp in, I go to this fingering with the fingers only. I'm not doing any tonguing unless I am playing a note 7 before or after that, and then I have to use an 8. Okay. So if you're hearing a better or different sound, it's maybe just because I've done it for so long, I'm pretty good at it. No tonguing, no breath pressure. I'm just bouncing these fingers. And that's what's giving me that sound. In case somebody's thinking about this, they're saying, well, on the 7, you go to 8. Well, why don't we just do 8 all the time? The reason I don't is twofold. A, I don't seem to hear this in the recordings that I listened to when I first started playing this instrument. And also, if you go to 8 all the time, you start to develop what's called a pedal point, which is, it begins to be a recognizable tone. So if I do that, I'm always on 8. I hear this whoop, 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 and I begin to recognize that pitch. Because I'm using the octave, it's the pitch of the root of the flute itself. So 7 is more discrete. Oops. And it doesn't really sound like a true pitch. And this is one reason why this is idiomatic to this instrument, because other instruments don't have this fingering for a note. They usually come straight up the pipe. And so if you do that, you start to hear the pitch. But this is because it's a covered, this is called a cross fingering. It makes that note a little bit weaker. It's not as loud. And there's a lot of things going on. Okay. Let's go back to sharing my screen. We're going to now look at what was at the end of the Adding Chirps handout, which is the only embellishment that comes after the main note. Not Minnesota, main note, okay? And I call this an end or a cadence chirp. It's my name. I don't know if it has an official name, but it usually happens, as it says here, it's played as an ending, either a phrase or a song. And at the end of a song, it's usually held into the downbeat of the next phantom measure. And what I mean by that is that in this example, for example, I have a whole note, 4 counts. So I would wait until I come back around and count beat 1 again to the missing measure at the end of the piece, and I would do the embellishment. It's usually almost always from the root to an 8, so 1 to 8. But it could be a cut. You could go to another note. It doesn't have to be to 8, and it doesn't have to be that you're the main note, because now the main note is ahead of this now. It does not have to be note 1. But I hear that a lot, and you've heard this a lot too. And you'll also see that when I execute the lifting of the fingers to go to that 8, I'm silently saying in my mouth, what? Because the what kind of closes off the airstream and the t gives it a little pop. So, and these are tricky. I don't always do them as well as I would hope. But let me just play this example, and then I'll unshare my screen and you can see my fingers. And I'm sure you're going, oh yeah, I've heard that before. All right. So I'm holding the note to 1, and then I'm saying the word what, and I'm opening up to this fingering, which is just 8. Okay. And when I say the what, I'm getting that T to pop that when I come up. And then it also, the T closes off the airstream. What? What? I'm actually not saying the T really hard. I'm just kind of going, what? And I can do it from other notes. Like let's say I'm on 3. That was 4, 5. That will work that way. You hear them a lot though from 1 to 8. Or I could do the same thing on as a cut, or in other words, any note above the note. So let's say here I'm on 1, I'm going to go to 5 instead of 8. Or 3 to 5. Let's try 1 to 7. Yeah, I don't like that. I just don't like the way it sounds. Now, it could be if I'm on a different note. Yeah, see, 4 to 7, I didn't mind. Uh, your note has a pop sound. Mine is just a quick high note. Yeah, well, it's because you haven't done it a lot. So again, you're going to want to learn to coordinate your tongue and your fingers to when you say what, the T, the what. I'm not actually saying the aspiration of the T. If you were in my articulation, you'll remember I talked about aspirating consonants. So I'm going what, and I'm holding it. And I'm choking out the end right away. If I don't, or the airflow, if I don't do that, I just keep playing a note, right? So I got to stop the note right away on that T. Why don't you guys all try that for a little bit, whether you're on A or G or F or Q. I'm getting punchy. So if I go back to the handout for Little Crow Dance and I play those last two measures, I would hold that whole note at the very end of the piece for 4 counts, and then on the 5th count, the next beat that doesn't exist, I would do the pop. Now, you don't have to do that, but I feel that I usually have a rhythm going, a pulse, and that adds to the pulse. It's not just something random. It's a nice sound, but it doesn't give you that with the beat that's underlying what I'm playing. Okay, so, and this also may be come out of the fact that I, when I was doing my albums, most of them were with rhythm, so I tended to be playing to a drum track, and so the drums were there even if the flute stopped. Okay. All right. Again, if you have any questions, pop it up in the chat. And yes, if you're having trouble with it, you got to just sort of work with this. You got to practice it. These are very tricky techniques. I was thinking about this today, that playing a musical instrument is one of the hardest things that we can do. Because if it was easy, everybody'd be good at it, wouldn't they? Right? It's obviously much more difficult than driving a car. Everybody drives a car. Some people poorly, some people better. But a musical instrument is a hard thing to play. It's hard, and that's why a lot of people don't do it, and that's why a lot of people don't necessarily do it really well, or should I say a small amount of people do it really well, because it's tricky. And so the same thing with these embellishments. If you don't get it right away, that doesn't mean it's not doable, it just means that you need to kind of work with it a little bit. And hopefully the things that I'm telling you will kind of help you get there eventually. Okay. So that's an end cadence, an end chirp or a cadence chirp. Now, I'm using the term cadence because cadence in a musical context is the end of something, and it's usually determined by a melodic line and also some harmony coinciding that makes us feel like, oh, we're at the end of something, and that's called a cadence. So I'm just using that. That's why I said end chirp too, because you can call it that as well. It's at the end of something usually.